This is the Yiyinova mvp20u+FE, and I'm gonna review this sucker. This is a 20-inch screen, and this is a revised version of the 20 MVP that was out earlier, and the way you could tell the difference is this one has the letters FE at the end of the name. I was intrigued by this because it's pretty big, and for its size, it's one of the cheapest drawing tablets you're gonna find anywhere. My very first impression when I took the pen and started drawing on the tablet was that this was pretty good.
This is pretty good.
It is one of the largest screens I've ever drawn on, and I think that was part of the appeal to me. The resolution is full HD, 1920 by 1280, and it looks better than I expected. I've gotten used to high density displays, and I thought being able to see the pixels on this might not be much fun, but really that didn't bother me at all. It's surprisingly light and easy to move around. It even has these ridges along the back so that you can hang it off your desk a little bit when you get closer to it. I was a little skeptical of that part at first. I don't know much about science and fulcrums and that sort of thing, but that seems like a recipe for disaster to me. I was only brave enough to put it to the lowest setting, but I found it to be really comfortable. Just kind of hanging it off your desk a little bit gets you a little bit closer to the tablet and to the screen. The big question here for this tablet is, what is the trade-off? Obviously, it's super cheap, so what aren't you getting that you might get on a different tablet that costs more? Well, the trade-off overall is that it feels cheap. Really, we're talking here about the build quality of the tablet itself. All the cords that plug into like the back propping up area all feel kind of wobbly to me, especially the power cord. I really kept like trying to push it in because it didn't feel like it was in there at all. It did, and it worked. All the cords, even the USB cord, just doesn't quite feel as tight as you want it to. And the least wobbly cord of them all, which is the display cord, was actually the most finicky one as I used this more and more. I kept unplugging it and replugging in the cord like several times a day. Usually the problems with it manifested in these little screen blips that didn't bother me at first, but over time they really did. And I found that if I shifted the monitor or bumped it at all, I was asking for a world of trouble. Even with it screwed in as tight as I could get it, it still was having trouble, and I still found it finding a way to jar itself loose. Part of it is because it doesn't fit well, and the screws are like so far away from the edge that I couldn't get them in as tight as I wanted to. The other weird thing that happened with the display to me once is that it went from the 16:9 kind of mode to like 14:3, like just without touching anything. It just boom, snapped to 4:3. I spent an entire hour reinstalling drivers, rebooting my hardware, uninstalling other drivers that should have had nothing to do with this tablet, and reinstalling. It was a mess. I couldn't figure it out. And finally, I realized that it's actually these little buttons along the side. You can change those. How it changed to 4:3 in the first place, I have no idea. But I guess this tablet has quirks. Now, the drivers that most people cite with these kind of tablets as being one of the more frustrating parts, I found to be smooth sailing. I installed this thing on 2 separate Macs and 1 PC. The drivers went in smoothly, and the initial install went fine, and I was off to the races, no problem. Now, many of the drawing tablets that have come out in the last couple years have dramatically cut down the space between the glass that you're drawing on and the actual screen underneath it. And you see this like especially in the new Wacom devices, where there is something that a lot of illustrators refer to when drawing digitally called parallax. That's the amount of distance between the tip of your pen and the cursor underneath it. And a lot of the new devices have very little or no parallax. This is a little different. This is kind of a throwback to a device you might have bought a couple years ago, and there's a good, it feels like between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch between the screen and the glass. There is a ton of parallax here. It didn't bother me too much, but if you're doing precise line work, it probably will bother you. The pen itself has 2056 levels of pressure sensitivity, and I found that the initial amount of pressure you had to put on it to draw was very light. So if you're a light drawer, this will work very well for you. And I found that the overall pressure curve worked pretty well. I found that the mid-levels, they held well, but it felt like I had to apply a little bit more pressure to kind of get that mid-level than I expected to, or what I'm used to in a pen. But however, overall, I felt like that's something you can get used to using this tablet over time. This brings me to what I think was probably the biggest problem I had with this device overall, which is the pen is battery powered. With a lot of battery powered pens, you get jitters, especially when you're drawing diagonal lines. I've talked about this in other videos, but this one took it to a new level. When I used it in Photoshop or Clip Studio, everything was fine, but when I moved over to Sketchbook Pro, I found that some of the tools, especially the pencil and the pen that I use a lot, had a ton of jitter to them, and in Sketchbook Pro, it was unusable, and that went for on both the PC and the Mac. Like I mentioned, Photoshop was better, Clip Studio was better, but it was still noticeable there as well. So there was something else that was happening that was really weird. I have never seen this in a drawing tablet before. I think you would call it accuracy. I wanted to call it like a wobbly line. Neither of those describe it really well, so I'm going to try my best to explain what was happening here. When I draw a line on an angle, it almost feels like I am drawing on a curved surface. And that means like when I'm drawing that line, I will see the cursor like go up away from the pen and then maybe float down underneath the pen. And this was happening at a pretty wide range, like up to 1/8 of an inch. You know, a 1/2 centimeter sometimes difference between these things. I ended up going in, and there's 2 ways to calibrate this. There is a 4-point screen calibration. There is a 9-point screen calibration. I ended up doing the 9-point screen calibration. That improved it, but it still wasn't good. Now the little plastic doodad that the pen came in has like this little ruler along the side. So I placed that down on the screen and I drew along that ruler line, and you can see I traced this line several times over, and you could see that kind of wow of that line a little bit. You see it kind of bow out away from the ruler. It is very hard, if not impossible, to draw a straight line with this. Some models of this tablet come with a little remote thing. Mine didn't actually come with one of those, so I can't review that in particular. Actually, I don't think mine came with one. Well, let me check the box. Nope, there's not one in here. Anyway, there are no express keys on the device itself, so if you want something like this, some models are sold with it, some aren't. Make sure you double check that if you want one before you buy it. So overall, I'm kind of left with some mixed feelings on this tablet. I'm not sure how to take it. You know, my initial response was, hey, this is kind of fun to draw on, and I was kind of initially, you know, surprised at how well it worked for how cheap it is, and I really liked the size of it. Also, there's a lot of people out there who have the older version and love it and swear by it and have made great videos about it. So obviously, there are a lot of people who really appreciate this product and really love it. However, for me, for my style of artwork, where I don't like a lot of jitter to the line, I like to get as smooth and crisp of a line as I can get, I don't think it suits my particular art style really well. If you've been looking at a tablet like this and are thinking about it, I would really recommend doing more research. On my website, I've created a page for this tablet, and I've compiled some of the other reviews, some of them for the older version, some of them for the newer version, but I have them all there in one place, so you can go in there and do some research on your own. Don't just take my word for it, you know, look up what some other people are saying about it. You may find that they can offer some more insight to the type of work that you're doing that I can't. So that is the Yiyinova mvp20u+FE. Hey, you made it to the end. If you want to check out some of those other reviews I mentioned before that I aggregated together, they're not mad. I have that down below in the description. Also, I have a new tutorial coming out. It's about 3.5 hours, all about PROCREATE. If you've ever wanted to master that iPad program, that's coming to Udemy in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to have it out to the Patreon supporters probably in the next day or two, so keep your eye out for that. And last but not least, if you have any comments or questions on this tablet or anything on this channel, let me know down below. Or of course, you could always hit me up on Twitter. That's all I've got for this week. I'll see you guys later.